So I hope everyone's been acquiring a lot of knowledge. Thanks again, Bill, for being a part of this. I'm here with Tim Brown, who is a new term to me, co-CEO and co-founder of Allbirds, I don't know if I want to say sneaker or casual shoe footwear brand that's exploded since its inception in 2015. Tim was a professional soccer player and did a little bit of research and really was a fan of how you came about the name, New Zealand. And when people discovered New Zealand, there were no mammals. It was one of the few places where there were no mammals, so it was like, it's all birds at this place. So that's how he came up with the name for the shoe company, that's very creative. I think as athletes, we're always trying to figure out, you have a large group who want to start their own company when they're done, and you see different athletes going down different avenues, and entrepreneurship is one of them. And I wanted to ask you, how did you transition from being an athlete to an entrepreneur?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us. Look, it was a long journey. I mean, I think I was encouraged pretty early on in my career. So I came over, New Zealand is where I'm from originally. I came to the University of Cincinnati when I was 18 on a soccer scholarship, when they were the #1 basketball team in the nation. Kenyon Martin was there, and played soccer there for 4 years, studied design, which is what I'd fallen in love with, and then went on to have about an 8-year, 10-year professional soccer career playing largely in Australia in the A-League. And was encouraged by a lot of people close to me to really think about what was next. And I was so the business that was to become Allbirds probably started in 2007, and I didn't retire until 2012.
Okay.
And it was a curiosity project. I started making shoes. I found a factory literally online that I visited in my off season. I made some shoes for my teammates who told me that it was a particularly bad idea and the product was awful. And I just kept on going, and here we are. 8 years later was when we officially launched it.
So I read that the inspiration behind it, being a soccer player, being an athlete in general, I think footwear is a big part of our culture, and because it's a big part of us playing. And you were saying you wanted to simplify the shoe. You thought there was too much going on.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't know what it's, different level obviously, but getting free gear was a big driver.
Yes.
In my sporting career.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still remember the moment when Nike gave me my first deal, and I felt like it doesn't get much better than this,
Right.
And but everything had a logo, and you have to wear that stuff all the time. And so the idea that it was very, very hard to find something very simple was the driving initial inspiration to go make my first pair of shoes, and with the idea that no logo was an opportunity in footwear. And I stumbled into this enormous industry, knew nothing about it, and really fumbled with the idea for a long time. Made my first pair of shoes and realized that there was a broad opportunity. But I didn't sit down and write a business plan. There was no big strategy. I didn't raise money for 6 years. This was about making the most of a lot of the time I had when I was an athlete, and in the same way that you are too, keeping busy when I was playing.
So for a lot of people that don't understand the impact that you've had, especially in Silicon Valley, it took you just 2 years to sell your millionth shoe.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's impressive in itself, and you just kind of spoke to it that you didn't have a business plan, and then it's an existing space with major players like Nike, and then you have Adidas, and then you have a lot of newcomers, especially in the basketball world. We had our panel earlier on footwear. So for me, I wanted to ask you, how did you have that confidence that this is something you wanted to go after? And at what point did you tell yourself, okay, this is it, and I'm gonna continue down this lane?
Yeah, in some ways I didn't, and in some ways I still don't, and maybe that's part of the reason that you're driving forward, trying to make it a little bit better. But just to kind of sync the timelines up, I probably started working on this in 2007. I went to the World Cup in New Zealand in 2010 in South Africa, had my last professional game in 2012, retired and went to business school at London School of Economics, and it wasn't until March 1st, 2016 that Allbirds was born, and then it kind of exploded over a couple of years and looked like an overnight success. And I think particularly in this town, particularly in this area, people want to believe that you have an idea, you show up, and then the next day it all comes right. And And it just hasn't, I mean, I've seen it twice, both in my sporting career and in my business career. You chip away at something for a long time, no one wants to be your friend, and then, you know, you make the NBA and everyone's calling you, you know?
Right.
So I feel like that was our experience, and I think people overlook the fact that that it was a bad idea for a long time before it was a good one.
Right. So your company is direct to consumer, correct? And I want to point to what made you decide to go to direct to consumer, or were there other companies that influenced you to go down that route as well?
Trial and error. So initially, you know, the initial model was a higher price point. The initial model was purely design, and I stumbled into the footwear industry and realized that it's enormous. There's 20 billion pairs of shoes a year made on average, which is a mind-blowing statistic, and they're all entirely touch wholesale. So there's this prevailing low-kit cost mentality in the way that they're made. So they tend to be made out of very cheap materials, and saw an opportunity to innovate, you know, with natural materials. Initially, in the first case, with wool, but realized with a direct-to-consumer model, by selling straight to our customers, we had the margin room to really invest in materials that were better for the environment, that made a differentiated, better product experience, but also became our competitive moat, because the rest of the industry had to go through an intermediary. So it was kind of our, you know, became our sort of our wall, if you will, in terms of going to market. And look, the number of people that Joey and I sat down with who were from the footwear industry, or who were from the wool industry, or from the sustainability industry, and said this can't be done. There's a long list of them. You know, and so there isn't that many pure direct-to-consumer plays in footwear, and there's a few more now. But when we launched in 2016, it was a relatively new idea, and people said you have to go through wholesale. And so we tailored the whole business in a slightly different way.
So when we talk about direct-to-consumer, you're doing well. You sell 1 million pair of shoes in just 2 years, which is a very short period of time. Now you have all the data. And then you're direct-to-consumer, so you have all the data for all your customers. When you look at expansion, I saw two things. I saw Allbirds, and I saw the ladies' shoe.
Sure.
Which were impressive. How do you use the data to tell you which direction to go into next?
I think we're still learning. I mean, I think the other interesting point about those 2 years and on the road to 1 million pairs of shoes was we only had one style.
Right.
And traditionally in footwear, there's a range. I mean, Nike at the time changed everything all the time very successfully. They're masters at that. We sold one shoe, and something probably more akin to a model, a technology model. We updated it all the time. So there was 27 changes through those first 2 years to the core product. But even now, we only have 4 styles, and they change on a regular basis. So there's no version 1, 2, or 3. It's a continuous improvement when we find new materials and new ways of working. And we've added, you know, Allbirds because the name was so good.
Right.
Interestingly, just as an aside, we chose this name. It was great, and then we found out that the .com was an adult entertainment site. Yeah. So we managed to get hold of that one. Some of you were nodding your heads like, I knew about that. Yeah, I know who you are. And so we've added, you know, a few different styles, but ultimately the big drivers for us as a business is retail. And I think the narrative of this idea of retail being dead is kind of everywhere, and it hasn't been our experience. We had our first store under our offices just here in San Francisco. We've now got 9. We just opened Seattle, including 2 in China. Auckland's about to open, and retail's been phenomenal for us. And we see a really interesting interplay between our physical store and our online business, and we're just beginning to understand that. And then international. So we launched in the UK. We've got a team on the ground there. We've got 25 people in Shanghai. Launched in China a few months ago. So the international expansion is really important to us, and I think that we've, you know, our larger purpose of sustainability and using sustainable materials to make products in a better way resonates with a global consumer in a way that's really exciting.
So I'll stick to that point when you said sustainability. Was that always your vision in terms of how you wanted to build something that could leave less of a footprint on the environment? You know,
like I was fortunate to find Joey, and along the way find that larger purpose. You know, it was interesting. It was a boyhood dream for me to play soccer professionally, and I got there, and I really enjoyed it. But look, you know, I mean, from people from the outside, sometimes it's not always rosy. It's not always easy.
Right.
But I unlocked along the way the idea of playing for my country, and that was transformative for me in my career. I was like, just getting a taste of doing that was something that I was prepared to put up with all the downside sometimes of being an athlete. And likewise, I started off on the business career selling shoes, and that was fine. We understand that really there's this enormous problem in the footwear space that the fashion industry more broadly has been paying lip service to the idea of the environment and of sustainability and of making things properly and carefully, and found our purpose. And Joey, my co-founder, had committed his career to that, so he was further on that journey, and it's been the reason why we started Allbirds, genuinely, and it was the reason that we imagined a business that would be part of using new materials with a different type of business model to show people that sustainability could be at the center of a really, really successful business. And I think, look, I mean, it's a larger topic and probably not where we want to go now, but I mean, it seems like every week there's another climate report coming out that's sort of suggesting the impending doom that we're all facing, and the problem is urgent. And, I think in our small way, we see a vacuum of leadership and hope that our little company can show people that, that you can do this in the right way and in a profitable way.
And then I'll stick on the business side. In terms of, you started direct-to-consumer e-commerce, do you feel like it's kind of doing a 180 in terms of you start in that space and then you go brick and mortar, as opposed to before you saw it was brick and mortar first, and then they tried to make their way into the...
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the direct-to-consumer narrative is sometimes conflated with e-commerce, but it's really about owning the relationship with the customer wherever they are.
Yes.
And in our particular case, footwear was always going to be... I mean, everyone's got a childhood memory of going to their local shoe shop, getting fitted with that little silver metal thing that no one knows the name of, someone disappearing into the basement, coming back 9 minutes later with a stack of boxes and not having your size. Mm-hmm. So we knew that would be a part of our business, and we saw a huge opportunity to do that, differently. Mm-hmm. I think that was always part of our plans, and it ended up happening a little bit more quickly, but we're enormously excited. And I think, again, we're seeing it as a four-wall contribution to our business, but also probably the best marketing dollars that we have. Gotcha. And when we launch in Boston, as we did recently, we see a halo for our e-commerce business in a really meaningful way. So the interplay between those two things. So just the direct-to-consumer thing, I guess the key point is it's about meeting your customer wherever it is and controlling the ecosystem. And I think that is upending a lot of very traditional categories because it leads to a better customer experience.
So I think what a lot of people in the Silicon Valley would call the shoe is the new work uniform.
Right.
And you've grown to embrace that. But looking forward, do you see yourself going into pure athletic performance along with the rest of the line?
Look, yeah, I mean, I think it's a big question we're wrestling with at the moment. We've been enormously focused in our product offering, and now starting to pick our heads up to imagine what comes next. Mm-hmm. And look, I mean, I think the broad vision for what the brand is much larger. And so I think, there's a lot of really exciting opportunity in many of these things that we're working at. We've now got a team of nearly 300 people. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to build the infrastructure, trying to, some of these great footwear brands that you've talked about are remarkable companies. Yes. That have had 30, 40-year head starts. And it turns out making shoes and making footwear is an extremely difficult thing to do. So, we're playing catch up in terms of working out how to do that really well, but making real progress. So, I think next year will be a big one for us to sort of continue to unfurl that vision.
When I don't want to compare the two, but when I think of Allbirds, I see parallels with Tesla and the car industry.
Sure, I'll take that.
Just being disruptive. Yeah. Right? So should Nike, Adidas,
I'll tell you what I like about that example. I think on the topic of sustainability, it's people don't buy sustainable products; they buy great products.
Right.
And I think when you think about Tesla, what they've done remarkably, and it's a cliched example, but you don't think about them as an electric car that is potentially good for the environment. You think about the fact they're fast.
Yes.
And we want to be known as a design-led company that makes incredibly well-designed, comfortable footwear, not as a company that is making products that are better for the environment. I sort of think you've got to lead with that message, and I think it's a big challenge for the topic of sustainability. I think we win when we find businesses that find ways of not talking about it because they've ingrained it in the way that they go about what they're doing. And Quite frankly, if you're in business today and you're not thinking about it, you're going to be on the wrong side of history, and I'm quite sure of that. And the businesses that are preparing to act in an environmentally responsible way are the ones that are going to win in the long run. So I think that's the truth.
Right. So I say Tesla to say that, you're a $1 billion company now. You're north of $1 billion valuation, and obviously Nike's taking notice, Adidas is taking notice, GOAT is taking notice, Foot Locker is taking notice. Should these companies be afraid?
Oh, look.
Or are you worried about them trying to get into your space, and how do you balance, how you maneuver each and every day?
We're in an extremely competitive situation, and the idea that, quite frankly, if I go back to talk to me in 2008 when my teammates were in the locker room, literally running around. I was chasing them around the locker room, trying to get the first samples of shoes back from them because they were holding it above their head, laughing at this stuff that
Right.
It can be a cold place.
Yes.
If I could go back and talk to Tim circa 2008 and say, hey, you're going to be mentioned in the same breath as those brands, I would have said, yeah, I'll take it. And then you talk to me now, and I think it's the athlete in me is going, we've got so much further to go. We've only just scraped the surface of what we can be as a business and as a brand, and on the larger mission and purpose that we're on. So I think I kind of toggle between those two things,
right,
and hopefully in a pretty healthy way.
Gotcha. And then, before we open it up and take questions, if anybody's ready, this is probably my favorite question. You see in sports, you hear about super teams, and this guy's going to team up with that guy, and now Anthony Davis with LeBron James, and people hate us for having Kevin Durant because we destroy everybody. My question, you call yourself co-CEO. We don't see that title
right
as much, but now you see this kind of parallels, and can you coexist with a superstar, or can these guys coexist? How does that? You say it's an advantage. Talk to us about that title and how you and Joey work together.
I just you can go so much further when you don't care who takes the credit. And I haven't been a basketball guy. I haven't, and I moved to San Francisco, and you guys are winning a few games, so I turn on the TV and I watch it, and I'm connected less to the game, if I'm honest, but seeing the way that your team spoke after the game made me think I'm listening to the All Blacks here. So the All Blacks are the rugby team in New Zealand that are famous for having an just enormous track record of success, and the way they speak about the team first. It's always about the team. It's about the results. And just most recently, when you had a bunch of injuries, and I'm, normally post-match, no offense here, but post-match interviews are you just don't watch them. It's a complete waste of time.
True.
But I'm watching this because, some of your stars, you're talking about the fact I'm so excited that the guy that I've been banging up against in practice is going to get an opportunity, and I'm going to support him, and I'm going to be a cheerleader for him. And there's some big name stars talking in that way, and I'm thinking, this is the All Blacks. That's a culture and environment of excellence that just kind of, has been the greatest. To understand what that feels like has been the greatest gift I think sport's given me. And if there's one thing that I've tried to take from that career and infuse into the Allbirds environment is that, look, you put that first. You always put that first. Great things can happen, and I think that extends all the way down to Joey and I's relationship as sharing the leadership of the company.
Well, I think we have time for a few questions.
Hiya. I know at the beginning, I feel like quite a lot of people got Allbirds for free through like corporate partners or other ways. Did you rely on gifting and things like that to get the shoes on people's feet so they could experience it for the first time? Or do you have any other hacks that you did right early on?
I think I missed that free shoes.
Yeah, totally. And I also know that we've never discounted a pair of shoes, so someone was paying somewhere down the line. Look, I think the idea that we were adopted as part of a work uniform, I think has been a popular narrative, and quite frankly, something we didn't really see coming. It's been really, really nice. But I think the business and the brand has been adopted here really wonderfully well, but also in New York and around the country and in different markets all over the place. And so I think it's been a relatively small part of the success, albeit a great one. And I think the way that we've tried to position the brand Allbirds is that sort of everyone's welcome, and there's a democracy, and to the way that we've sort of presented the product and seen it adopted by all ages, all age groups in a way that's been quite surprising, and that's been a nice. But I guarantee someone paid for it.
Hello. So my question has to do with what you said about.
Oh, couldn't see. I thought it was a voice in my head.
Yeah. So my question has to do with what you said about owning your customer relationship.
Yep.
The other last week, I was sitting down with some other founders that are direct to consumer, and one of the questions I asked was, how are you kind of navigating outside of the traditional sort of social media marketing pathways to be in front of your customer, in addition to the storefronts? What are novel ways that you're getting in front of your customer?
Look, I mean, I think word of mouth has been the biggest driver, and that's easy to say. Make a product that people want to tell their friends about, and I'll say that was easy, but we went through 200 variations of the product over 8 years before we cracked this one particular perspective on a shoe, and we unlocked the insight that comfort is the number one reason why people buy shoes, but it's usually equated with ugliness. So could you bring a design point of view to this topic, and that was going to be something people were going to tell their friends about and buy their office workers as a gift? Like, I'm as surprised as anyone, to be quite frank. And so, the word of mouth has been the driver. I think subsequently now, and we couldn't have built the business in any other way. We couldn't have paid for it. It just doesn't happen in the condensed time period. And our marketing budget through the first was basically zero. PR, in terms of telling the story of why this mattered, was really, really effective for us. And I think we were able to do that because this was about a product, sure, but it was about a larger purpose and an environmental moment and a dedication for us as a business to do something more. And I think that, I think that resonated with people that are craving businesses that are connected to the topic of sustainability, particularly in fashion. And then finally, I think retail has been a way for us to enter a market and get incredible awareness. It's like a flag, a billboard for our brand, and we continued to use that to connect with people, to fit them with a pair of shoes, and to tell them the story of the provenance of the materials that are a part of the product and why we're making it. And so I see an enormous sort of runway for that as a marketing vehicle for the brand. And then look, just continuing to make products that people want to talk about.
I think that's our time. I want to thank you, Tim, once
Thanks,
again
man.
for being here.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.